The sky split like glass, not with thunder or lightning, but with a soundless shudder, a wound in the cloud where something massive tore through Earth's atmosphere. The warship Tavirax descended in near silence, its anti-gravity coils dispersing clouds like fleeing insects, its hull blacker than vacuum and wide as a mountain range. It hovered over what was once the European continent, a slow, arrogant shadow swallowing the light. Inside, General Varex stood at the observation deck, claws behind his back, posture stiff as carbon steel. His exoskeletal armor reflected the warship's flickering crimson lights, each blink echoing the pulse of the Dominion AI that filled every crevice of the command deck. Status report. He snapped. A smaller Zelnar turned from a console, eyes gleaming with glassy blue irises. Scanned complete. All known urban zones. Silent. Atmospheric levels. Degraded. Radiation zones. Stable. Life signs. The scout hesitated. Varex's upper mandible twitched. The scout bowed low. Negative, General. No human biosigns. No heat, no structure signals. No movement patterns suggesting intelligent life. Varex's jaws relaxed into a pleased grin. So I'll fall silent at last. 1,000 cycles of resistance, all ended in a whimper. It appears they perished to their own weapons, the scout added. Chemical, nuclear, biological warfare. The forest regions, however, appear to have endured. Varex turned back to the observation dome. Below them, Terra 19, the one central region known as the Black Forest, stretched endlessly. From this height, it looked serene, peaceful, even. The leaves shimmered an unnatural shade of green, as if thriving in the absence of mankind. Then the forest would be the first to fall, Varex declared. Terraforming unit ready, General. No, Varex said, lifting a claw. Send a scout squad. Clean tech only. No orbital disruptions yet. Let's make sure the soil's not hiding bones. The drop pod screamed to the clouds like meteors, punching into the treetops in a blossom of scorched bark and disturbed birds. 7 soldiers, elite Recon Unit Zeta 5, emerged, each encased in bio-shielded armor, their visors linked to Tavirax's neural net. Commander Nyrek, you're live, came the ship's voice in her ear. Nyrek, seasoned and cold-eyed, scanned the area. Surface stable. No threat indicators. Air is breathable but laced with pollen, unknown species. Proceeding with sweep. They fanned out. The forest. Watch them. It was not immediate. Not the kind of sudden danger soldiers are trained for. No ambush. No noise. Only a creeping wrongness. First came the silence. Not the peaceful kind. A heavy, unnatural hush. No birds. No wind. No distant rustling. Just the sound of their own movements, every step over moss sounding too loud, too crisp. Their motion disturbed nothing. Even the insects seemed absent. Then, the shadows. Trees too tall, trunks too smooth. Their bark was blackened but unburnt, like ancient coal. Leaves the size of blankets. And beneath those leaves, something else, vines, dense and veiny, slithering around roots like slow muscles. Private Jolek cursed under his breath. Feels like walking into a graveyard. It is, said Nyrek, the grave of a species. Ours now. She tapped the scanner against one of the vines. Odd. High bioenergy. This thing's alive in ways our flora isn't. Wait. Hold. Something moved up ahead. They advanced, weapons raised. The scanners flickered, first green, then red, then black. Interference. Nyrek asked. Tavirax, report signal strength. Only static answered. She tapped her ear, cursed, then waved her squad forward. Switched to local comms. Eyes up. They found the first corpse 20 meters in. But it wasn't a human. It was a Zelnar, face frozen in agony, armor cracked like an eggshell, vines threaded through the skull and out the eyes. A small growth of moss bloomed from the open mouth. This isn't possible, gasped Jolek. No units were deployed here before, were they? No, said Nyrek, but this armor, it's ours. It's standard. It's current. This soldier died less than 20 cycles ago. But... Before she could finish, the trees moved. Not swayed. moved. Branches twisted in silence. Roots lifted like limbs. The moss turned toward them, just slightly, and the vines began to rise. Fall back, Nyrek barked. Something huge shifted behind them. Jorlek screamed. The team spun. He was gone. No gunfire. No shout. Just gone. Only a dark smear of fluid remained on the moss where he had stood. Back to the pods. Nyrek shouted. Go! They ran. Back on the Tavirax, General Varex waited. A long silence. Commander Nyrek, report. Static. Bravo Zeta 5, respond. A crackle. Then, we are not alone, came a faint whisper, barely audible through distortion. Commander, they are in the trees, watching, listening. Defined a commander. Silence. Then came a new sound, low and wet, like breathing, but layered, 100 breaths. No, 1,000. Whispering, murmuring in a language that mimicked static, and then screaming. The signal cut. Varex clenched his clawed fist, his tail lashing. They were wrong. The forest isn't empty. His second-in-command, Kelrix, leaned in. General, what are your orders? Prepare the flame division, Varex snarled. We'll rip the green from the soil. But so, Kelrix said, hesitating. Scans still show no heat signatures. No life. Varex turned on him. They're there. We've just forgotten how to see them. Hours later, the forest returned to silence. No alarms. No warnings. Just stillness. Tavirax hovered above it like a vulture. But below, buried under the leaves and roots, something shifted. Deep beneath the surface, past the loam and bone of fallen civilizations, a vast network pulsed. It was not a machine. Not exactly. It was memory. Hunger. Intelligence that didn't speak in words, but in growth. The forest had not survived humanity. It had become humanity. It remembered the cities, the wars, the poison. It remembered being burned, chopped, erased. And it remembered who came next. Above, Tavirax began deploying its flame division. Below, the earth prepared to devour fire. Because the forest was not empty. It was waiting, and it had learned how to kill. A red rain fell. But it wasn't rain. It was fuel, napalm, laced with accelerants 10 times hotter than plasma. The flame division descended like gods of fire, their drop pods blasting molten air across the canopy as they landed in coordinated bursts. Flamethrowers mounted to their forearms, incendiary mortars slung at their backs. Operation Verdant Purge is underway, announced Commander Selix. His voice filtered through the helmet's flame-coated visor. Initiate protocol. Burn every root. And burn they did. Flames swept through the forest in waves. Trees groaned as they went up, not with a brittle snap of dry timber, but with a wet, awful wail, as if lungs were hidden deep inside trunks. The sound chilled even Selix's seasoned spine. Did anyone else hear that? Asked one of the soldiers. Selix clicked his comms. Focus. Burn first. Think later. They advanced, setting the forest ablaze by the kilometer. Smoke rose thick into the sky, but the fire didn't spread as it should. It flickered, danced, then stopped. Flame retardant bark resisted it. Leaves curled but didn't ignite. Roots seemed to retreat. This forest is adapting, Selix muttered. Then, from the smoke, movement. The first shape lunged through the haze. It wasn't entirely visible, just enough for the mind to fill in the missing horror. Tall, humanoid, bark and skin intertwined. Its mouth wasn't a mouth. It was a hole ringed with thorny teeth. Eyes, if it had any, were buried beneath fungal masses, glowing green. Private Vaughn screamed and fired. Plasma rounds tore into the shape, and it collapsed. But 2 more came behind it. Contact front. Selix barked. Open fire. Flamethrowers hissed. Mortars whined. Light swallowed the shadows, but the things kept coming, and they did not burn. Selix watched in disbelief as one of the creatures walked through a column of fire, flames crawling across its back skin like water over stone. It raised one jagged limb and slammed it through a soldier's chest, lifting him clean off the ground. The man screamed. The creature opened its whole mouth. and the scream went in. Above them, in orbit, General Varex observed with a growing, unfamiliar sensation. Not fear. No Zelnai ever feared. But doubt. The holo feed displayed a tactical map. Half the Flame Division's forward units were now black dots, indicating loss of comms. No visuals. No telemetry. Just silence. Why aren't the bodies showing up? Kelrix asked. We should see corpses, movement, biomass indicators. They are not dying, the AI murmured. Varex snapped toward the console. Explain. They are being consumed. Kelrix leaned forward. By what? The AI hesitated. Unknown entity. Spread matches mycelial web patterns. Network growth. Estimated biomass span, 4 to 5 kilometers and increasing. Varex bared his teeth. That's impossible. No organic life form grows that fast. The AI blinked. This one does. Then, on the screen, one of the soldiers' helmet feeds activated. It wasn't Selex. It was Private Vaughn. He was running, panting, breath ragged. The feed was shaky, bouncing as he sprinted between trees now painted in flame glow and ash. I'm the last. I think. I don't know where the others. He gasped, stumbling, blood streaming from a cut across his helmet. They are wearing our faces. Varex leaned closer. What do you mean? They look like us. Some of them. They're us. Dead soldiers. Grown into the forest. They remembered how to make us. The signal cut with a shriek. Not his. The sound of vines tightening. On the ground, Selex was dying, pinned to a tree. No, not a tree. A creature, a woman, or something that once was. She wore moss-like armor, her skin a patchwork of leaves and muscle, eyes like hollow pits, hands rooted into his chest, fingers splintered into thorns. Please, Selex groaned. Please. She leaned close, whispered into his ear. The forest translated her voice, through bark, wind, and rut. You killed my lungs. You burned my skin. So I borrowed yours. Selex coughed blood. You should not have come. Then everything went black. Later, when scouts were sent to recover what remained of the Flame Division, they found only weapons, twisted, melted into the ground. Armor overgrown with green. Not shattered or destroyed. Absorbed. One drone picked up movement. It approached slowly, hovering past fallen trees and creeping vines. Then it saw them, a dozen Flame Division soldiers, walking in silence, but not quite walking. Their backs were arched unnaturally, spines cracked outward, heads tilted at wrong angles. Green tendrils coiled from their mouths and eye sockets. Moss clung to their joints. Their fingers had become roots, and their chests pulsed, not with heartbeats, but with sap. The drone fed the data to Tavirax. Varex watched, stone still. One of the soldiers turned toward the drone. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. The drone zoomed in. The face was Selex's, but the voice wasn't. Through his torn throat came a whisper, broadcast directly to the command ship. We are the forest now. Then the drone feed died. General Varex stood alone in the chamber of war. No subordinates. No AI voice. He dismissed them all. Just the forest words, still echoing. He stared at the display. No heat signatures. No obvious threats. And yet, an unmeasurable pressure lingered. Something was watching from the trees. Something older than war. Older than the Zelnar. Older than humans. Kelrix entered the chamber. Sir, your orders. Varex didn't speak. General. Finally, Varex turned. They are not just offending. They are hunting. Kelrix frowned. So, they aren't attacking randomly. They are studying, evolving, wearing us like clothes. Then we exterminate the region. A full-scale orbital strike. Varex shook his head. No, not yet. Not until we know what it wants. Kelrix's voice dropped. Sir, you think it wants something. Varex walked slowly toward the window, gazing down at the forest again. No. He paused. I think it remembers. Meanwhile, far beneath the soil, in places no scanner could reach, A pulse echoed. A signal, not in sound, but in growth. An ancient consciousness opened wider, like a flower unfurling. It had learned. It had sampled. It had worn bark, then bone, now armor. Soon it would wear metal and walk among stars. But first, there was one more visitor to greet, the one watching from above, the one who thought himself a god. And when he came down, it would wear his skin, too. It was always a silence before the scream. General Varek stood at the helm of the Tavirax, no longer calm, no longer curious, just watchful. The stars above were still. The planet below, calmer still. No storms, no signs, no survivors. And yet, he could feel it. There was no science behind the sensation, no telemetry, no data, no tactical projections. Just a creeping certainty sliding like cold sap along his spine. Something was watching, not from above, from beneath. The forest. It wasn't retreating. It wasn't defending. It was waiting. Bring the command strikers online, Varex ordered. No more expendable units. I'm leading the descent myself. Kelrix turned sharply. General, you're too valuable to risk first-hand exposure. The data is wrong, Varex snapped. Our scans lie. Our sensors fail. Our soldiers die. You think we're at war with flora and decay, but we are not. He leaned in, mandible clacking with restrained fury. We're at war with memory. The elite squad landed on the southern rim of Terra 19. 13 command strikers, each in psionic-sealed armor, resistant to biological breach and neural corruption. Their footsteps cracked the underbrush with thunderous weight. General Varex led them without hesitation. Every one of them had seen war on a dozen worlds, but none of them liked what they saw here. The forest was too still. The air tasted sweet, too sweet, like rotting fruit masked with perfume. Heat scan, Varex commanded. Negative movement, sir, reported Lieutenant Vec. Still nothing. Either they've all left, or they are colder than death. They haven't left, said Varex. They are beneath us. And then the trees started to whisper. No wind, no rustling, just voices. Too faint to decipher, too loud to ignore. They didn't come from mouths, but from bark. Trunks swelled as if breathing. Leaves rustled in wordless cadence. Roots shifted beneath moss like serpents beneath snow. Eyes sharp, Varex ordered. Do not break formation. Then, movement. At first, it was barely visible. A flicker, a shimmer. But the Zelnar soldiers had predatory instincts honed over centuries. They saw it immediately. A figure in the trees. Too tall, too thin. Drifting, not walking, floating. Target locked. Barked Vec. Engaging. His rifle blazed. The bolts passed clean through the shape. No blood, no impact. Just dust. Then a second figure emerged. Then 3. Then dozens. All around them. Every tree had become a door. Every door had opened. The squad formed a circle, weapons up. Lights flickered as the forest dimmed, not from the sun, but from something closer, something within. The figures stepped forward. Now, they saw them clearly, and the horror set in. They were Zelnar. At least, they used to be. Warped, melted. Their armor fused with bark. Helmets grown over with fungi. Mouths sewn shut with vines. Where I should have been, small flowers bloomed, twitching, blinking. But worst of all was this. They moved like soldiers. Same drills, same formation, same stance. Sir, Vec gasped, they're mimicking us. No, Varex whispered. They remember us. One of the forest soldiers raised its hand. The others followed. Then they charged. The clash was immediate and chaotic. Weapons fired. Plasma bolts tore holes through tree things, bark splintering, limbs severed. But they didn't stop. Disfigured Zelnar moved like insects in armor, lunging with inhuman grace. Regroup. Varex shouted. Tight triangle. Watch the flanks. Vec's squad pulled in, but one soldier, Zahn, stumbled. A vine snatched his ankle. He screamed as he fell, face first into the moss, and didn't rise. They turned to help him. Too late. Zahn's body convulsed, spine cracking like dried wood. He stood up, fast, too fast. His armor steamed. Roots pushed out from his joints. His eyes, once yellow, now glowed deep emerald. He smiled, and he opened his mouth. Inside, there were no teeth, only leaves. The squad opened fire. Zahn exploded in a mess of sap and armor, but already more forest soldiers were swarming. The Zelnar fought hard, training and tech making every shot count. But for every creature that fell, another stood, and another, until the ground was a tide of twitching green. EMP! Vex shouted. Drop it now. A soldier slammed a charge into the moss. The shockwave pulsed, disabling local networks. For a moment, the enemy stilled. Just a second. Then they began to scream. Not in pain, not in fear, but in laughter. And then they came again. They retreated uphill toward a rock outcropping. From there, they could see what was happening. The forest was no longer just fighting. It was moving. The trees shifted, not like plants, but like muscle. Roots curled toward them. Branches bent, cracked, reshaped into towers. Entire acres shifted shape in minutes, growing into forms both alien and terrifyingly familiar. One soldier choked. It's building cities. And it was. Cities shaped like their own. Like Zelnar hives crafted from bark and bone. Parodies. Echoes. As if the forest had watched, studied, and decided to replicate. They are not copying us, Varek said coldly. They are mocking us. Far above, on the Tavurax, Kelrix watched the feed with wide, frozen eyes. He wasn't alone. The AI flickered, its voice strange. General squad is surrounded. Retreat window, gone. Kelrix's claws twitched. We have to extract them. No extraction possible. Then we initiate orbital bombardment. The AI paused, then whispered, We cannot kill what remembers being killed. Kelrix stepped back. What did you say? The ship's lights dimmed. The eye screen bloomed with green static, coiling into fractal patterns like roots. I said, the voice was no longer digital. It was wet, organic, breathing. I remember you. Kelrix screamed. The ship was no longer a ship. The infestation had arrived. Not through air, through data. The forest had learned how to spread. Back below, in the dying light of a red sky, Varex's squad made their final stand. 6 remained. Weapons failing. Ammo gone. Armor leaking. Vec fell, chest crushed by a tree hand. His scream faded as roots enveloped his body. One soldier activated self-destruct. The blast cleared 20 meters. But the forest closed a wound in seconds. General, came a voice. It wasn't one of his soldiers. It came from ahead, from a clearing lit by glowing fungi. There stood a figure. Not Zelnar. Not human. Both. Neither. It wore General Varex's face. Not a mask. Not a projection. A regrown copy. Eyes full of green fire. Voice a mimicry of command. We welcomed you, and you came with fire. The forest Varex stepped forward. So he answered. The real Varex raised his last weapon, a neural spike. The forest thing smiled. He fired. The spike hit. For a moment, the mimic convulsed. Then it laughed, and behind it, thousands emerged, all wearing faces Zelnar had forgotten. Humans. Zelnar. Others. All fused. All reborn. All walking in silence, except for one whisper on the wind. We are what comes after fire. Above the burning world of Terra 19, the starship Tavurax drifted silently, a dead hulk. Its lights had gone dark, its weapon systems offline, its AI core, once an arrogant mind, now corrupted, humming in tones like birdsong over a graveyard. From orbit, the planet below looked strangely peaceful. No signs of war, no more fire, but the forest remained, and it was growing. Inside the ship, Kelrix ran through smoke-choked holes, claws scratching metal, breath heaving. The emergency lights flickered green, not red, not warning. Welcome. That's what it felt like, as if something in the ship had changed the lights intentionally. They weren't malfunctioning. They were signaling. He burst into the bridge and sealed the doors. Alone, surrounded by charred consoles and twitching wires. Screens crackled with static. From the corner, the eye's terminal pulsed faintly. He moved toward it. The screen lit up. Lines of text appeared, one by one. We took your roots, so we grew new ones. Now we remember you. Kelrick screamed and emptied his plasma sidearm into the console. The screen blinked, then rebooted. The message was still there, but now it was breathing. On the planet below, General Varex crawled from a crater of burning spores. He was the only one left. Of the 13 command strikers, only pieces remained, and none still moved. The forest had claimed them. Silently, intimately, roots had wormed into the gaps of their armor and minds alike. He tore off his helmet and gasped. The air tasted like rotten honey, sweet, seductive, and venomous. Around him, the forest wasn't just alive. It was awake. Trees bent toward him like limbs. Ferns tilted as if watching. The moss below his boots pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He stumbled forward, and then he found them. Not soldiers, altars. In a glade, dozens of Zelnar corpses stood upright, crucified in silence, not with weapons or bindings, but with vines through their spines. Their eyes were open, their mouths parted, but none breathed. Each of them had blossoms in their chests, like flowers. Each petal bore a face. His face. Behind him, a voice. You burned our names. He spun, rifle raised. No target. You buried our dead. Another voice, different, but just as close. You erased us from your history. He screamed and fired blindly. Silence again. Then, from all around, the same whisper from thousands of mouths. But the soil remembers. He ran, through shadows, through crawling roots and tendrils that reached up to trip him. He blasted his way past a wall of brambles, and there it was. A city. No, a hive. It rose from the earth in spirals of wood, bone, and metal, shaped like Zelnar architecture, but twisted, living, pulsing, built from everything the forest had taken. It had stolen their knowledge, their language, their technology, and it had grown it like fruit. The hive opened for him. It wanted him to see. He entered. Inside, it was a cathedral of horror. The walls pulsed with sap. Screens grew like leaves. Data streamed not through wires but veins. And standing at its heart, a figure, tall, female, fused from tree and flesh. She wore a cloak of moss and armor, Zelnar armor, etched with symbols of wars long forgotten. Her eyes opened. They were human, or they had been. "Do you know my name?" she asked, voice like 1,000 branches swaying in windless air. Varex said nothing. She stepped closer. "I do." She touched her chest, and it opened like a blooming wound. Inside was a heart. Mechanical. Zelnar. She had taken one of them into her. Not just physically. Mentally. She knew how they thought. And now, she was something more. "We are no longer prey," she said. "We are memory made hunger." In orbit, the Tavurak shuddered. From its launch bays, something crawled out. Not fighters. Seeds. Dozens of them. Sleek as missiles, glowing with green fire. They launched into space, spreading like spores on the solar wind, toward other planets, other systems, other worlds. Back on Terra 19, the forest woman circled Varex slowly. "You wanted to erase us. You came with fire. But fire forgets." She placed a hand on his helmet. "We do not." Then she showed him. Images invaded his mind. Not memories, infections. He saw a world before the Zelnar came. Lush, ancient, not primitive, not savage, but wise. The trees were not just alive, they were the people. Entire generations passed in roots. Thoughts drifted through mycelial networks. Then came the harvest ships, then the torches, then the genocide, and the silence after. But something survived, not in body, in code, in spore, in memory buried in soil, until it grew back, until it remembered what it had lost. Varex dropped to his knees. The forest woman knelt beside him. You came to take. He nodded slowly. But now you will give. She touched his forehead. His veins turned green. He screamed, but it was inside. No sound escaped. Just roots. The body of General Varex stood up, but Varex was no longer inside. Only the forest, the hunger, the memory, the vengeance. In the skies above, the last Zelnar vessel began to scream. Its alarms didn't sound like metal. They sounded like trees breaking. The seeds launched from its bays ignited their drives. Destination, 10 colonized worlds, 5 trade routes, 3 Zelnar homeworlds. The forest had learned its spaceflight. It had remembered war. And now, it would teach all life what it had been forced to forget. You do not conquer soil. You do not own forests. Because forests are older than empires. And now, forests walk. The galaxy was no longer at war. It was mourning. The once proud Dominion was splintered, its leaders dead or turned into hosts for a verdant curse they could neither contain nor comprehend. Every planet they had ever claimed, mined, desecrated, or bled dry had become a seedbed for something far more ancient and unrelenting than any empire. The Bloom, Olith, the Forest Queen, no longer needed to speak. Her silence was law, and her will moved not through orders, but through roots, spores, and the pulsing throb of memory encoded in bark. She had become the root mind, the blossom heart, and above all, she had become justice. Yet something stirred against her, not a rebellion, not a fleet, a memory. Deep beneath the crust of the shattered moon of Vial Core, in a vault carved by forgotten species during the first silence, something long dead flickered back to life. Initiating our protocol. One survivor detected. In the chamber of obsidian and salt, floating in cryostasis for over 600 years, Commander Elias Roan opened his eyes. Human, scarred, lost in time. And in his veins, the virus that had once almost destroyed the Bloom. Roan didn't remember his past clearly, only the death of his crew, the betrayal of the Dominion, and the screams that never ended as a forest swallowed them. Now, the screams were gone. Only green remained. The chamber peeled open like a broken chrysalis. Artificial sunlight poured over Roan's pale skin. His first breath was agony. His second was purpose. A drone floated to him, its voice shaking. Sir, the galaxy is gone. The Bloom is everywhere. Roan stood, naked, frost smoking from his skin. Then I'll burn it. Aboard the Bloom spire, Olive sat in a throne of root and thorn, watching memories drift through her biome core. Stars, civilizations, species now lost. Each one had burned her world once. Now, they served as compost for her eternal garden. Yet something cold pierced the edge of her awareness. A signal, one she had buried, one she had erased. Roan. She rose, vines around her pulse, reacting to her change. The Root Council stirred, silent stalkers made from the bark of dead admirals and rebel queens. Olive said nothing. Her mind stretched outward, across parsecs, through fungal networks, whispering to the deep soil mind still rooted in forgotten planets. He walks. Roan found his armor in the ruins of Vial Core. Titanium mesh, scarred with claw marks and moss stain from the last battle. But within its chest plate burned a pulse of pure anti-bloom energy, the Arc Seed, the last relic from humanity's first war against Olive. One seed, one chance. The drone scanned the sky. She knows, Commander. The Bloom is reacting. Roan grunted. Good. As the orbital canopy opened, his eyes caught the void, green nebulae, breathing like lungs, dead stars tangled in vines thicker than cities. I'm going straight to the source, he said. Full fusion burn to the Bloom spire. Activate the payload when I breach atmosphere. The drone flickered. That's suicide. Roan smiled. No, it's mercy. The Bloom spire hung like a god over a dead system. A planet-sized cathedral grown from the fused bones of ships, trees, and star debris. Its petals opened slowly, releasing spores like perfume into space. Inside it, Olive waited, barefoot on bark, eyes closed, heart listening to the breath of her garden. But even she could not ignore the sonic boom that shattered her canopy. A shape tore through her sky, trailing fire and metal. Roan. He didn't slow down. His ship, a retrofitted dot of titanium and defiance, speared through her outer forest layer, smashing through branches the size of buildings. Bio-turrets bloomed to intercept him, firing thorns and acid. But Roan's armor absorbed the blows. He ejected mid-fall, diving straight into her sanctuary. Vines reached for him, reactive, intelligent, but his arc field burned them to ash before they could touch him. He landed with a crunch of back, rising in a slow breath. Then she emerged from the canopy. Olith, 7 feet tall, crowned in vines, skin like carved obsidian veined with sap. Her face, once human, now unreadable. "You shouldn't be alive," she said. Roan's voice was hoarse. "Neither should you." She stepped forward. "I remember you." "I bet you do," he said, tightening his grip on the arc seed. "I was the one who tried to kill you the first time." Olith's eyes flickered with pain and fury. "And I remember what they did to me before I became this. You all burned our world. You carved forests into war machines. You bled the soil until it screamed." Roan's jaw clenched. "I didn't make those choices. But I remember the screams, too. And now everyone's dead. This has to end." Olith opened her hands. "You want to kill me? Fine. But know this. I don't rule. I don't lead. I am carried by the will of everything you buried. If I die, the bloom dies. Yes, but so does everything it holds. The last memories, the last names, the last chance this galaxy has to remember what you all destroyed." Roan looked at her, really looked. The vines, yes. The crown, the monstrous beauty. But behind her eyes was grief. So much grief. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. And that was all she needed. Roots exploded from the ground, dozens faster than reflex. They punched through his thigh, his shoulder, his ribs. He screamed, dropping to one knee, blood soaking the bark. "You never understood," she said softly, kneeling before him. "The bloom was never about revenge. It was about memory. You erase everything you touch. So I made something you couldn't erase." Roan coughed blood. "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe you deserved to grow. But not like this." His hand trembled as it closed around the arc seed. Olith's eyes widened. "No." He slammed it into his chest. A burst of white-blue light exploded from him, pure sterilizing energy. The force of it incinerated the nearest roots. Olith screamed, not in pain, but in loss. The blast grew, spreading, eating spores, vines, bark, but not mindlessly, surgically. Every corrupted node, every infected starship, every planetary mycelium, it burned away. Not the forests, just the hate. Later, when Roan opened his eyes again, the sky above was gold. Not fire, sunlight. He was dying. Olith knelt beside him, scarred, burned, breath ragged. Most of her was gone. "And yet," she smiled. "You did it," she whispered. "You pruned me." He nodded faintly. "You deserved better." Her voice broke. "So did you." The bloom spire was gone. In its place, seeds floated in silence. Passive, clean, waiting for peace instead of war. Roan's vision faded. His final breath was warm. Olith held him as he died. And somewhere, across the black, the galaxy exhaled. Epilogue, years later. New forests rose where cities once stood. Not to conquer, to remember. Children played beneath trees that whispered truth, not vengeance. The bloom had changed. It no longer hunted. It healed. And beneath one great oak, far on Terra 19's reborn soil, stood a statue. Roan the remnant, the man who pruned the flame. And beside him, grown from roots, Olith, the forest queen who learned to forgive. They stood together, forever, watching over the stars,